Today for Devotions with Daniella, we are reading True Tales of Misery, Betrayal, and Abuse, 12-Step Horror Stories about Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a very long story called Don't Be Angry, It's Not Spiritual, and Berenice has already been through multiple AA meetings. Yes, she tried different ones, and she's been graped by more than one person and then told all these terrible victim blaming things about it. Despite the dubious aspects of much of its lore, AA also has a very powerful human element that keeps people sucked in, just like any cult. Relationships are formed, friendships are formed, and meetings satisfy a voyeuristic desire. By hearing the struggles of others, I was kept riveted to my seat. This kind of personal exposure is hard to find anywhere else except in cults. It is very alluring. The promises were the carrot and the steps were the stick. There was an evangelical power to the meetings, which was mixed with a strong spell that was cast on us all. And by the way, cults always do this, right? They always have some sort of ritual where you are required to lay yourself open to the group and just take whatever the group has to give you. These are called degradation ceremonies. It is also true, studies have shown, that when people are sharing their horrific stories of struggle in a group environment, in a high control group environment where they know they will be rewarded for a worse story with applause or attention or love from the group, they will exaggerate their stories and their rock bottoms. Not saying that people don't have some crazy rock bottom stories, but yes, saying that many of these are played up for the crowd, because that's what we find that human beings do. Knowing nothing about mind control when I entered, I was not able to identify what was happening. I intuitively knew something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. For this reason, I fell under the AA spell. Being desperate and therefore willing to entertain almost any new idea certainly contributed to it. AAs openly say that the program is brainwashing, but our brains needed washing. Well, they are at least half right. And this is one of my things with AA that I'm starting to call out a lot more. They love to call themselves a cult. They love to joke about how they're a cult. They love to joke about brainwashing, but they get real mad when a cult expert suggests that maybe you actually are a cult and maybe it's not good. Another reason I kept coming is that there was a climate of shame at home. I was still in the doghouse with my family, so naturally I gravitated to my new AA family, even if it employed similar dysfunctional methods for keeping me in line. I kept on coming, trying to make the best of it. The resentments I had against Chuck and Lenny took their toll. I refused to do the fourth step in the fashion presented to me. I was seen as a bad seed in AA, the rebellious alcoholic. Over and over, I was warned against being willful. Compliance and obedience were rewarded with social approval. Free thought was met by rejection. I learned through repetition that those who do not take the suggestions do not make it. I was to concede my will to the better judgment of my sponsor or the group. I was to take her suggestions. But I just couldn't do it. The thought of it made me sick. If I refused the suggestions, I would be shunned by the group. If I took them and felt worse, it was my fault for taking them since they were only suggestions. And this is called blaming the individual for systemic problems, and almost all cults do it. Because of my broken state, I could not at the time recognize this as circular logic, which is used to make the program look perfect at the cost of members' sanity. Ooh, gotta highlight that. I learned that nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Why, I wondered, does God want me to live like this? The internalized rage took its toll, and I developed a pathological compulsion to both abuse men and find one who would protect me. Even if I learned that a big, benevolent, supernatural patriarch was there to protect me, provided that I bowed to him with humility, he didn't seem to be picking up the signals from my prayer antenna. Nevertheless, I had scraped together a few years of sober time. not because of any moral cleansing, but simply because I was terrified of having to go through an incident like the grape again. What was the culmination of these events? It wasn't good. Often, schmexis behavior by the men in the rooms would trigger hostile, reactive behavior on my part. This is not my natural state, but was a result of the internalized trauma. I wanted men, especially men in AA, to be attracted to me and to suffer because of it. I wanted them to want me and then to get absolutely nowhere, ever. I was young and attractive enough to pull this off, and since I had just become completely schmexually dysfunctional, I was able to be just friends with almost any man, with no feelings of missing out on my part. The trauma affected me in so many ways. The more I internalized it, the more powerful its influence became. I felt a pathological compunction to lash out against men who were openly misogynistic, who openly objectified women. Fellow AA members witnessed this behavior, and to this day, some of them think that it was this behavior which invited the grape, and not the untreated grape which resulted in this behavior. And by the way, grape happens because of grapists, nothing else. What I had turned into was not good. As yesterday's victim, I was now driven to be the victimizer. This behavior seemed to flow naturally because I had not found any empathy or compassion for the original trauma. And she says in an earlier part of the story, like, if everyone has to blame themselves for their part in anything that happens to them, does that mean I can go around abusing people and it's their fault? No one felt sorry for me, so why should I feel sorry for anyone? This behavior continued until I finally crossed paths with someone who fed me a dose of my own medicine, and I could taste how bitter it was. Without the necessary healing, the therapy, the human compassion, the empathy, and the support of my loved ones and peers, I became completely wacky. I tried and tried to turn it over to God, but it must have been tied to a boomerang, because back it came every time. And when it came back, I would feel like a failure for not being able to turn it over like the others seemed able to do. This contributed to my feelings of shame. I even lost my best friend in the rooms because I was too angry to be around and because I wasn't nice to men. At the time, I couldn't explain why because I had internalized the whole incident. And by the way, cults are always controlling attitude. Anger is something that's never supposed to be expressed. And women, of course, are supposed to be nice to men, make them feel comfortable. Instead of healing me, many of the slogans wounded me, and the platitudes I heard, which were supposedly quick fixes to deep emotional pain, were more like salt thrown on a festering wound. The steps, well, they claimed to lead to a peaceful place, but for me, emotionally, they seemed to descend into hell. I felt so out of place, I couldn't share my experience because mine wasn't a good experience, and sharing bad feelings was seen as being whiny or unaccepting of God's world. This is why the atmosphere of the meetings often seems so positive and uplifting, despite the fact that alcoholics are often hiding extremely painful histories, because revealing the true nature of deep emotional pain is often discouraged. I wanted so much to be part of the in-group, the happy recovering drunks, the grateful AAs who were part of the in-crowd. But I had one thing going against me. I was never good at hiding my feelings. If I was angry on the inside, it would show. For this, I was shamed, sometimes subtly, other times not so subtly, for not working the program. I still hadn't given up on AA because its control over me was powerful, and I did see people who seemed happy, and I wanted so much to be like them. I got another sponsor. This time when I told her my story, I knew that blaming Chuck and Lenny would get me a reprimand, so I reframed the event entirely to blame it on myself. This fit the program better, and this is what got me the approval, which I needed so very badly. And we're going to have to keep reading this another day. It is still very, very long, and so far, pretty good.